Welcome back, everybody. Masterminding attacks worldwide. The U.S. and its allies publicly blaming hackers affiliated with China's main intelligence service for the hack on Microsoft's email software this year. Here now, Dave Kennedy, trusted SEC CEO. Great to see you, Dave, and good evening to you. Obviously, we've been talking about cyber attacks. It's been a theme, the Colonial Pipeline, that one coming out of Russia. Now we're talking about one coming out of China. Your thoughts about sort of where we go in the landscape of this field, because it appears that the United States has left itself somewhat weak to its foes when it comes to a cyber attack.
Yeah, that's a great point to make. All of our adversaries right now are really testing the waters on the cyber warfare front. You have Russia with the ransomware side of the house, where they have, folks that are conducting operations back here in the States. We have, SolarWinds, which was used to hack our supply chain. We have China exerting force on the cyber realm. There's no reason they needed to hack 30,000 systems. This was definitely a sign of dominance in the cyber realm. And they're really testing our capabilities, our responses, and what we're going to do from that side. And it's pretty concerning. China happens to be one of the largest, threats when it comes to a cyber warfare perspective. And right now, we really have to focus on policy and what that means from an offensive perspective and defending our country. It's all going to be things that we need to kind of formulate and plot, but we're pretty far behind right now, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let's talk about that policy, right? Because it's part of it is holding countries accountable for actions the things that they do to us, right? And when it comes to cyber warfare, we don't necessarily have a playbook to go by. So you've got an administration here that's kind of making the playbook up as we go. Your thoughts on how this will be handled, how China, how Russia, how other foes that could potentially get in the game here, and we'll talk about that in 1 second, may respond.
Yeah, the crazy part about all of this is that, cyber warfare has been around for forever, right? So, the United States hacks into China, China hacks into us, Russia hacks into us, we hack into Russia. But it's typically been for military gathering purposes, understanding intelligence, right? Understanding what our adversaries are doing, what other countries are doing. And that's been kind of the kind of handshake agreement that's been happening. But we see with China, heavy on intellectual property theft. Russia, targeting from an intelligence perspective, but also going after our grid and our infrastructure and critical infrastructure for how we operate our day-to-day lives. Monetary gain from ransomware perspective, it's all over the place, right? So we really need to focus on, what constitutes what's acceptable cyber warfare and what's not. Companies, private corporations, hacking 30,000, systems and servers should definitely be off limits, especially from a damage perspective to our infrastructure and to the U.S. economy and our allies. Those are the types of discussions we're not having right now, and those are the ones that really need to be, held countries that need to be held accountable need to focus on those areas there specifically to say, if you come after us, we're going to retaliate, substantially with other cyber warfare operations, sanctions, et cetera. We have a laundry list of things we could do, but right now, unfortunately, we're not having any of those discussions.
Well, the previous administration was having those discussions, and obviously, if they were here, they'd probably be taking a different stance. But Dave, our own Hillary Vaughn just speaking with former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the issue, asking him how the White House needs to hold China and Russia accountable for these cyber attacks. I want you to listen to what he had to say.
I don't think they did enough on Russia either, but they need to do more with respect to China for sure.
And that's the question, right? More with respect to China. But we're also dealing with another big issue when it comes to China, and that is dealing with the origins of COVID-19 and some of the transparency issues and the potential that we're seeing, that we've seen this pandemic spread globally, essentially because there was a lab leak. Yet you've got a regime who's essentially saying, we're not going to let you in here to investigate. We're not going to really address any of these problems that are on the forefront and that are really so serious.
Yeah, there's no question that our largest threat by far, number one, is China. They're very much focused on overcoming the United States, our values, and everything else that goes along with that. They're extremely hostile on the adversary front and trade. You name it, they're hitting us on all fronts right now. We have to be very strong in how we go after China from a unified message about cyber warfare, about trade, about how we're doing everything else. Russia's definitely a problem as well, but not nearly the long-term gain of China and what they're trying to play with the United States. It's going to be an interesting one. I really hope we go aggressive against China on those fronts to really dissuade them going after private sector, intellectual property theft. You name it. There's a lot of challenges there right now.
Dave, what happens if we don't? Because there's a good chance that this administration doesn't. The
time is definitely ticking for us to be able to address these situations, and we have the means to be able to do it. If we don't, we can start to see some catastrophic loss around our critical infrastructure that we saw with JBS and Colonial. I mean, they're getting extremely aggressive. Again, the 30,000 servers that they went after, there was no reason other than to show a sign of force against the United States, saying, we're not scared of you. We don't think you can do anything back to us. This is how we're going to play and operate by. We're now the dominant force in cyber. And the time is definitely ticking down for us to be able to respond and to create some sort of standard for these countries to operate by, or else there's going to be some pretty major ramifications for our way of life here in the United States.
Yeah, I think the Colonial Pipeline incident was a good example of how it could impact our infrastructure and how it can impact Americans, on a daily basis. And you think about our power grid as well, very, very vulnerable. Dave Kennedy, great to see you tonight. Thank you so much for your insight.
Much.